I never believed Christians had anything worth defending. In fact, I hated everything about their faith. So one cold evening at a train station in Germany, I took a Bible in my hands, determined to destroy it. I wanted to prove something, that their holy book had no power, no truth, nothing special. I struck the lighter, held the flame to the pages, and waited for it to burst into fire. But what happened next? Till today, I cannot explain it. My name is Yusuf Al-Karim. I was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, into a family that lived and breathed Islam. From the moment I could speak, I was told what was right and wrong, what to believe, and what to despise. Every morning began with Quran recitation. Every evening ended with prayers. I memorized verses, repeated teachings, and obeyed rules I barely understood. Christianity, I was taught, was false. The Bible was corrupted. Those who followed it were misguided at best, deceived at worst. And I believed it. I hated it. I didn't just disagree with Christians. I despised their faith. I would never have imagined that one day that very Bible would confront me in a way I could never forget. Life in Saudi Arabia was predictable. I followed the rules, prayed when I was supposed to, and lived under constant pressure to be perfect. But deep down, I carried a restlessness I couldn't name. I envied freedom I didn't have, questioned things I wasn't supposed to, and wondered why God allowed suffering and injustice if He was truly in control. I didn't share these thoughts with anyone. I couldn't. My family and community would have seen it as betrayal, weakness, even blasphemy. Eventually, I left Saudi Arabia for Germany. At first it was exciting. Freedom, new culture, new opportunities. But freedom came with loneliness. Surrounded by people I barely knew, I felt exposed, isolated. And everywhere I turned, Christianity was there. Churches, crosses, people giving out Bibles. It angered me. I hated that I felt anything at all. That hatred grew inside me like a fire. I argued with Christians online, mocked their beliefs, and tried to convince myself they were nothing but fools. But every encounter only made my anger stronger, sharper, more personal. It became a mission, not just to reject Christianity, but to prove to myself that their faith was powerless. And that is how I ended up at that train station in Germany, that cold evening, holding a Bible in my hands, with fire in my heart and a single goal: destroy it. I thought I would feel satisfaction when it burned. I thought I would feel victory. I had no idea the Bible had plans to teach me a lesson I would never forget. Life in Germany was supposed to be freedom, a fresh start, a chance to escape the suffocating rules of Saudi Arabia. But it didn't feel like freedom. Everywhere I turned, Christianity was in my face. Churches with their giant crosses. Christians walking openly, praying, laughing, and giving out Bibles in the streets. I hated it. Every display felt like a personal attack. Every gesture, every word, every smile seemed to mock me. I didn't just feel annoyed, I felt furious. I argued with Christians online. I would debate with strangers, insisting they were wrong, that their God didn't exist, that their Bible was nothing but stories written by men. And yet, no matter how many times I tried to convince them, their calm responses and unwavering faith made me angrier. How could they be so sure? How could they believe in something I knew to be false? Then came the encounters in person. Small, innocent gestures that struck me like insults. A Christian woman handing out a Bible on the street. A man quietly praying at the train station. An elderly man offering words of kindness I didn't want. Each time my heart burned with more than irritation. It was rage, a fiery determination to prove them wrong. It wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. I wanted to prove it to myself. I wanted to destroy their faith, their book, their very belief in Jesus. I wanted to feel power over something I had always thought was false. And that is how I ended up that evening at the train station. Bible in hand, fire in my heart, trembling with anger and anticipation. I was ready to make a statement, not just to the Christians around me, but to the God I had never believed in. I struck the lighter and held it to the pages, thinking I would finally feel victory. But I had no idea that the Bible itself had plans to teach me a lesson I would never forget. I held the lighter close, its tiny flame trembling in the cold air. The people around me barely paid attention, just another man standing by the wall of the train station, just another evening in Germany. But inside me, a storm was raging. I opened the Bible to the middle, gripped the pages tightly, and brought the flame underneath. Dry paper should catch fire instantly, I knew that. I had burned books before, I knew how fire behaved. So when the flame touched the edge of the page, I expected it to curl, blacken, and ignite, but it didn't. The paper didn't change. No smoke, no heat, nothing. It was as if the flame wasn't even touching it. I frowned and moved the lighter closer, pressing the fire directly onto the thin sheet. Still nothing. A sudden chill crawled up my spine. I tried again, this time longer, angrier. I held the flame to the page until my thumb began to burn from the metal of the lighter, but the paper stayed white, untouched, unmoved. I stepped back, heart pounding. Maybe the pages were coated? Maybe this Bible was made of some special material. I flipped through the pages aggressively. They were normal, ordinary, thin enough that I could see the words from the next sheet bleeding through. I held the lighter to another page, then another, but nothing burned. The flame danced freely on the paper, but the paper refused to surrender. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. A man nearby glanced at me, then at the lighter, then at the Bible, but he didn't speak. No one did. It felt like the whole train station had gone silent, as if the air itself was holding its breath. My anger shifted into something else, something I had never felt before. Fear. Not fear of the people watching, not fear of getting caught, fear of what I could not explain. The more I tried to burn it, the more my hands trembled. I even tore out a page and held the flame directly under it. That page should have burst into fire instantly, but instead the flame bent sideways, away from the Bible, like wind was pushing it, even though the air around me was still. I froze. For the first time in my life, I felt completely powerless, completely small, completely seen. It felt as if something, or someone, did not want that book destroyed. My anger crumbled. My certainty dissolved, and for the first time, doubt entered my heart. "What kind of book refuses to burn?" I whispered. The answer scared me more than I was willing to admit. I stepped back from the Bible, my hands still shaking. The lighter dropped from my fingers with a clatter, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I stared at the pages, white, untouched, ordinary, and yet somehow impossible. A cold sweat ran down my back. People in the station walked past me, busy with their lives, unaware of what I had just witnessed. Only I had seen it, only I knew. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself I was imagining it. That it had been some trick of the flames, some weird reaction to the wind. But deep down, I knew I hadn't imagined a thing. My heart pounded. I felt my anger slipping, replaced by a trembling I couldn't name. For the first time in my life, something Christian, something I had spent years hating, did not bend to my will. And that realization shook me more than anything else I had ever experienced. I ran my fingers over the pages, half expecting to feel heat, scorch marks, anything. But the Bible was cold, untouched, perfect. My mind raced. How could this happen? I had burned paper before, books before, even leaves in the yard, but never something that refused fire. Fear and awe mingled inside me. Fear of what I had done. Fear of what I had just seen. Awe at the impossible reality of it. My hatred, which had been like a roaring fire inside me for years, suddenly seemed small, pathetic even, compared to what I had just experienced. I stumbled out of the station, clutching the Bible in my hands like it had become something fragile, sacred, untouchable. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could this be real? Could their God really be alive? Could the stories I had mocked all these years hold truth? I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. I told myself it didn't matter, that the Bible was just paper, and I had seen a trick. But every time I closed my eyes, the image of those untouched pages burned itself into my mind. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the Bible refusing to burn over and over, replaying in my mind like a scene from a dream I couldn't wake from. My anger, my certainty, and my pride, all of it began to crumble. For the first time I began to question everything I had believed, everything I had held on to as truth. And deep down I felt something stirring, a tiny, unexplainable spark of curiosity. A question I had never dared ask. What if the Christians were not entirely wrong? That spark was the beginning of a journey I could never have imagined, a journey that would change my life forever. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the Bible. The pages that refused to burn haunted my mind. Every word, every verse seemed to call to me, even though I tried to push it away. I was terrified, and strangely drawn at the same time. I couldn't tell anyone what had happened. My friends, my family, my old classmates, they would never believe me. They would think I was losing my mind. Even worse, they would condemn me. So I kept it to myself, carrying the memory like a secret fire I didn't dare speak about. Curiosity gnawed at me. Slowly, almost reluctantly, I began to read the Bible I had tried to destroy. At first, I opened it only to prove to myself that it was foolish, that the words were meaningless. But something unexpected happened. The more I read, the more I felt peace. Words that should have felt foreign or irritating began to resonate deep inside me. Stories of forgiveness, love, and mercy cut through the anger and pride I had carried for years. I spent nights reading in secret, hiding the Bible under my bed, reading passages over and over. At first, I rationalized it. Maybe it was just wisdom written by men, clever enough to stir emotion. But every time I read about Jesus, I felt something I had never experienced in all my years of strict Islamic devotion. Something living, tangible, and real. My mind raced. Could this really be true? Could this Jesus, whom I had mocked my entire life, actually exist? The doubts grew stronger than my anger. I began watching Christian videos online, not to argue anymore, but to understand. I listened carefully, trying to find weakness, but the calm confidence of the believers puzzled me. They spoke with certainty, with love, and with a peace I had never known. I even found myself praying, though I hated to admit it, even in secret. Not to God as I had been taught, but something else, something I didn't know how to name. I whispered words I wasn't sure I believed, asking for understanding, asking for answers, asking for the truth. And in those quiet moments, a part of me began to change. A seed of belief, small and fragile, began to take root. The anger I had carried for years didn't disappear overnight. It still flared when I thought about Christians mocking Islam or the fear of being judged by my family. But now, alongside the anger, there was also wonder, fear, and hope. For the first time in my life, I began to consider the impossible. That maybe, just maybe, the Bible really was more than paper and ink. That maybe the God I had rejected my entire life could be real. That night I closed the Bible, my hands trembling. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know where this curiosity would lead me. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I could never look at Christianity, or the Bible, the same way again. Something had changed in me. Something powerful. Something I could no longer ignore. In the days after I secretly read the Bible, I began noticing Christians in a different way. Before they had been irritations, reminders of a faith I despised, now they were intriguing. Their calm, their kindness, their genuine joy. I couldn't explain why it unsettled me so much. One afternoon I saw a man quietly reading his Bible on a park bench. Something about him drew me closer, though I hated myself for it. I sat a few meters away, pretending to check my phone, but I couldn't look away. He noticed my gaze and smiled warmly, not mockingly. That smile, it stayed with me long after I left. A few days later, I found myself at a small church near the train station. I didn't go inside, at least not yet. I just watched from the corner, fascinated by the people, the way they sang, the peace they carried. Their lives seemed whole, something I had never felt. Then came the first encounter that would change everything. The same woman who had given me the Bible months ago approached me again. She didn't scold me or try to preach aggressively. Instead, she asked softly, "Have you had a chance to read it?" I froze. I wanted to deny it, to insult her, to walk away, but the truth, that undeniable spark of curiosity, forced me to nod. She smiled again and said something I will never forget. "The Word of God is alive, Yusuf. It has a way of finding us when we need it most." Her words pierced me. I wanted to argue, to laugh, to prove her wrong. But something inside me stopped me. In the following weeks, I met her and other Christians in secret. I asked questions, careful, cautious questions. I listened. I watched. I even allowed them to pray with me, though I didn't fully understand what was happening. Something strange began to happen. Every time they prayed, I felt an unexplainable weight lift from my chest. My mind, which had been full of anger, doubt, and fear, felt lighter. My heart, which had been closed off for years, felt open, just a little. I struggled with fear and guilt. I was a Saudi Muslim raised to hate this faith. What would my family think if they knew? What would my friends say? Could I even believe? But deep down, I couldn't ignore it. The Bible that wouldn't burn, the kindness of strangers, the peace I felt in those prayers. It was all pressing on me, asking for my attention. Every night I would lie awake and think about the impossible event at the train station. Every night I would remember the warmth, the calm, the inexplicable power I had felt when I allowed just a moment of openness. And every night I began to pray secretly, not the prayers I had known all my life, but my own words, trembling, seeking, begging for understanding. I didn't know it yet. But these encounters, these small acts of love, these prayers, were slowly breaking down the walls of my heart. Walls built over 25 years of strict religion, anger, and certainty. I was beginning to see something I had never allowed myself to believe, that Christianity was not just stories and lies, but something alive, something powerful, something real. And little by little, I was being drawn toward it. The nights of secret prayer, the Bible that refused to burn, and the kindness of Christians had been working on me silently for weeks. I couldn't sleep. My heart was restless. My mind was racing with questions I couldn't ignore. One evening, alone in my small apartment, I opened the Bible again. The pages that had haunted me now felt alive in my hands. I flipped to a story about Jesus, his love, his forgiveness, his willingness to die for people like me who had hated him and rejected him. I read it slowly, trembling. My chest tightened. My mind screamed, "This cannot be true. It's impossible." Yet my heart whispered a different truth, one I couldn't ignore. I dropped to my knees, not because I fully understood, not because I had all the answers, but because I could no longer resist the pull. I closed my eyes and whispered words I had never spoken before. "Jesus, if you are real, show me. I want the truth. I'm tired of hating. I'm tired of being lost. Please help me." A sudden peace washed over me. My fear melted, my anger evaporated. I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the room or the heater. It was deep, overwhelming, filling every corner of my being. Tears ran down my face as I felt something I had never felt in my entire life: unconditional love. Not from a person, not from a system, but from God himself. In that moment I knew, there was no doubt. The Bible that wouldn't burn, the prayers of strangers, the peace I had felt, they were all pointing me to one truth. Jesus was real, and he wanted me. I accepted him, not because I had proof I could understand, but because I felt his presence, undeniable and real. I surrendered my life to him completely, letting go of my hatred, my pride, my anger, my certainty. I felt like a man reborn. Everything inside me shifted, The fire I had once carried, the fire of anger and hatred, transformed into a fire of awe and love. I wept for hours, not out of sadness, but out of relief, joy, and gratitude. For the first time, I experienced peace that didn't depend on circumstances, on people, or on rules. It was a peace that came from knowing I was loved, forgiven, and chosen by God himself. I knew life wouldn't be easy. My family, my friends, and my past would challenge this new path. But I didn't care. I had seen, felt, and experienced enough to know that I had been changed forever. That night, I became a Christian. That night, Yusuf Al-Karim died to hatred and disbelief and was born again in the truth of Jesus Christ. And from that moment, my mission changed. Not to destroy, but to testify. Not to mock, but to share. Not to hate, but to love. Because one Bible that refused to burn had shown me the power, the reality, and the mercy of God. After that night, everything changed. I was no longer the man consumed by anger and doubt. I was a new creation. Yusuf Al-Karim, reborn through Jesus Christ. Life didn't become perfect overnight. My past, my family, and my culture still pressed on me. Some friends rejected me, some family questioned me, and sometimes I doubted myself. But the peace I had received from God was unshakable. It was deeper than fear, deeper than worry, deeper than loneliness. I began attending a small church in Germany. At first, I sat quietly in the back, afraid of drawing attention, afraid of being judged. But the community welcomed me with open arms. Their love, patience, and kindness were unlike anything I had experienced before. I learned how to pray, how to worship, how to read the Bible and let it guide me, not just as words on a page, but as life-changing truth. Slowly, I saw my anger, pride, and bitterness melt away. I forgave those I had hated. I forgave myself for the years I had lived in darkness. Every morning I woke with gratitude instead of resentment. Every night I prayed, not out of obligation, but from a heart transformed by love. I began sharing my story quietly, first with one friend, then another. I realized that the miracle at the train station, the Bible that refused to burn, was not just for me. It was a message that God's Word is alive, powerful, and able to reach even the hardest hearts. I discovered a joy I had never known, a purpose I had never felt. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. And I knew that wherever I went, whatever challenges came, I had the strength of Christ within me. Today, I'm proud to call myself a follower of Jesus. Every step of my journey, every doubt, every fear, every miracle has led me here. And I am compelled to tell the world, the Bible is not just a book. It is alive. It is powerful. And it can change your life, just as it changed mine. If there's one thing I want you to know, it's this. The Bible is not just paper and ink. It is alive. It is powerful. And it can reach even the hardest hearts. I know because it reached mine. I was a devout Muslim filled with anger, hatred, and certainty that Christianity was false. I even tried to destroy a Bible, and it refused to burn. That moment changed everything. It awakened a curiosity I could not ignore, a fear I could not deny, and eventually led me to Jesus Christ. Jesus transformed my heart. He took my anger, my pride, and my doubt, and replaced them with peace, joy, and purpose. I am no longer the man I used to be. I am a follower of Christ, alive in a way I never imagined possible. If you are struggling with doubt, fear, or anger, know this: God is real. His Word is alive. He can reach you in ways you never expect. I am living proof, and He can change your life too, just as He changed mine.